Brace yourselves, because your next trip to the grocery store might feel eerily apocalyptic. Across the U.S., crucial staples are vanishing like ghosts from the shelves, and no one is immune. From your morning cup of coffee to pantry essentials like flour and cooking oil, the warning lights are flashing red. Are you prepared for what's coming? A perfect storm of climate chaos, global conflicts, and snarled supply chains is reshaping the very fabric of how we eat. Experts are calling it a food volatility tax, and it's already hitting where it hurts most, your wallet and your dinner table. The numbers don't lie. While overall inflation might seem manageable, certain items have skyrocketed in price overnight. We're talking double, even triple price tags on goods you probably take for granted. Social media is exploding with photos of barren shelves and rationed aisles. Shortages, desperation, panic buying. If you think it's exaggerated, think again. Reports from industry insiders reveal that supermarkets are preparing for some of the worst shortages we've seen in years. Today, we're revealing 10 grocery items on the brink of disappearing nationwide. Take this warning seriously, and get ready, because this list exposes the crisis lurking just around the corner. 1. Citrus fruits and juice. Brace yourself, a grocery store staple that has long been synonymous with freshness and vitality is teetering on the edge of scarcity. Whether it's a juicy orange, a zesty lemon, or a refreshing glass of orange juice, citrus fruits are in crisis mode. If you thought citrus groves in Florida, the heartland of America's orange production, were indestructible, think again. Florida's beloved citrus crop has been battered to near extinction. Hurricanes Ian, Nicole, and most recently Milton, in the fall of 2024, have left many groves in tatters. Entire fields were flooded, trees uprooted, and fruit decimated before it even had a chance to ripen. The devastation has pushed Florida's orange harvest to its lowest level since the 1,920. A mere 16 to 18 million boxes of oranges were produced. A tiny fraction compared to the 4 or 5 times that amount harvested just a decade ago. But extreme weather is only part of the nightmare here. A silent killer has been ravaging Florida's citrus groves for years, and it's called citrus greening disease. This bacterial plague spreads like wildfire, infecting up to 90% of Florida's citrus trees. Once affected, trees struggle to survive, producing either bitter, deformed fruit, or none at all. The disease doesn't just wipe out the current crop, it makes recovery nearly impossible, as newly planted trees take years to mature under mounting threats. The consequences for consumers are crystal clear, and they're hard to swallow. Orange juice prices aren't just climbing, they've skyrocketed. By early 2024, OJ hit record-breaking price levels, practically turning your morning drink into a luxury. Cartons of juice doubled in price, and some brands are outright vanishing from store shelves as the concentrate supply dries up. Shoppers in multiple states report spotty availability of lemons, limes, and grapefruits too. Grocers have started rationing bottles of juice to prevent panic buying. Meanwhile, fresh citrus is becoming just as elusive, and even if you find it, expect to fork over premium prices for fruits that are smaller and sadder than usual. If you're thinking, why not just import citrus from abroad? Well, there's bad news there too. Other leading producers like Brazil, Spain, and Italy are also grappling with reduced orange and lemon harvests. Europe's citrus industry suffered a double hit, from an unusually hot winter to devastating frosts, destroying thousands of tons of lemons and oranges. The global citrus market simply can't pick up the slack, leaving the U.S. more dependent on imports, but with little stock to go around. Restaurants and schools are feeling the squeeze as well. Some eateries are removing lemon garnishes from dishes or cocktails altogether due to soaring costs, while schools are switching to apples because they can no longer secure orange deliveries for student lunches. Even your humble grapefruit is no longer a given, as shortages and skyrocketing prices force many grocery stores to cut back on stock entirely. Citrus greening has turned Florida's titanic groves into ghostly shadows of their former glory, and hurricanes loom like a guillotine ready to bring even further destruction. With no end to the crisis in sight, that glass of OJ you reach for at breakfast may soon feel more like a rare indulgence than a healthy routine. Vitamin C capsules, anyone? 2. Coffee. The caffeine-fueled mornings we all take for granted are facing a terrifying reckoning. If citrus fruits are being squeezed out of existence, then coffee lovers are about to be jolted awake by a nightmare of their own. Coffee, the lifeblood of so many, is heading toward a dark, grim crisis. Supply chains are unraveling, prices are skyrocketing, and global production is at its lowest point in years. Everything about this brewing catastrophe will hit you where it hurts, right in your coffee cup. The root of this crisis lies in Brazil, the world's largest producer of coffee and the supplier of 40% of global coffee beans. Prolonged droughts have scorched its key coffee-growing regions, robbing plants of water and pushing them to the brink. Reservoirs have dried up, and fields once bursting with lush coffee plants now look like barren wastelands. Farmers watched helplessly as crops withered under the punishing climate. By early 2025, reports from Brazilian co-ops were grim. Stockpiles of coffee, typically brimming with beans, were nearly non-existent. Growers had sold off most of their 2024 harvest in desperate attempts to stay afloat, leaving them with almost nothing to buffer the gap until the next cycle. Meanwhile, Vietnam, the top exporter of Robusta coffee, used for instant coffee and blends, is no better off. Bad weather and a labor shortage crushed its exports, slashing availability by nearly 17% last year. And countries like Colombia and Central American coffee powerhouses haven't escaped trouble either. From floods to hurricanes and coffee plant diseases, every major coffee-growing region seems to be buckling under relentless blows. Here's how the numbers add up to disaster. 4 out of the last 6 years saw global coffee consumption exceed production. And now we've hit bottom. Warehouses that stored backup inventories are running on empty. By February 2025, Arabica coffee prices surged, hitting record highs of $4.30 per pound, a jaw-dropping 70% spike in just a year. Robusta prices aren't any better, with soaring costs rippling across the industry. What does that mean for you? Expect your favorite coffee brands to become pricier, and some might even disappear from shelves entirely. Specialty beans are especially vulnerable, with smaller coffee roasters losing out to bigger competitors in cutthroat bidding wars over limited stock. Already, some local roasters are removing single-origin favorites like Ethiopian blends because they simply can't source them anymore. Big coffee chains aren't immune either. Starbucks raised its prices by 16% on some drinks, and more hikes are likely. Supermarket shelves may stay stocked, but choices will dwindle and promotions will vanish. Don't be surprised if your budget-friendly coffee blends taste noticeably different as companies tweak their recipes to stretch supply. The crunch isn't limited to the coffee itself. Many people who rely on non-dairy creamers like oat milk may find themselves battling a double whammy as oat milk shortages threaten the perfect cup. The entire ritual of coffee, from bean to brew, is unraveling, and analysts warn that global production won't catch up to demand until at least 2026. For now, every cup will come at a premium, and you may have to savor fewer cups altogether. 3. Seafood. If you've counted on the ocean to deliver fresh, affordable seafood to your plate, brace for even deeper waters of trouble. From salmon to shrimp to crab, every corner of the seafood market is suffering, and the outlook grows darker by the day. Climate crises, overfishing, and ailing ecosystems are pushing seafood supplies toward dangerous lows. For seafood lovers, this unfolding disaster feels like a tidal wave with no shoreline in sight. Start with salmon, a familiar dinner favorite. Trouble has been brewing on the West Coast, where salmon populations are in a nosedive. Pacific salmon fisheries in California hit catastrophic lows last year, forcing officials to cancel the entire 2023 season. This wasn't an optional move, it was survival-driven to save diminishing salmon runs. Drought-stricken rivers and overfishing have combined to create an ecosystem where many salmon simply can't return to spawn. 2024 offered no relief, with regulators again imposing draconian fishing limits. And the plight of shellfish is just as devastating. Indigenous populations of Alaskan snow crabs saw a shocking 90% crash, necessitating multiple seasons of outright bans on crab fishing. Marine heat waves caused the crabs to starve and die in record numbers, leaving fishermen without a catch. Shrimp populations in the Gulf of Mexico suffered as well. Rising water temperatures and pollution wreak havoc on breeding cycles, ensuring fewer shrimp survive long enough to catch. It's a ripple effect you feel with every visit to the fish counter. Prices are surging across the board, inventory is shrinking, and what you do find may be of noticeably lower quality. That fresh fillet you rely on for a quick, healthy dinner? Don't be shocked if it's missing or replaced with overpriced, farmed alternatives. No matter where you look, the reality is harsh. The era of affordable, abundant seafood is slipping through our fingers. The crisis is real, and the question now is not when, but how profoundly it will impact every table. Swimming upstream is no longer an option in this relentless tide of change. Or olive oil. Imagine walking down the cooking oil aisle only to be greeted by empty shelves or locked display cases, as if you're shopping for luxury jewelry. That's the grim reality for olive oil, the liquid gold of the Mediterranean diet, which is vanishing before our very eyes. If you've noticed those price jumps on tiny bottles recently, it's not your imagination. Olive oil is in crisis, and the story behind it is a nightmare of scorching heat, severe drought, and global scarcity. Spain and Italy, the powerhouses of olive oil production, have endured 2 brutal years of freakish weather. Southern Spain, in particular, suffered its worst olive harvest in decades when a punishing summer heatwave turned olives into shriveled husks, still clinging to their scorched trees. If that wasn't devastating enough, unseasonal autumn floods drowned groves in waterlogged destruction. Over in Italy, orchards faced their own hellish mix of erratic heat, rain, and diseases that ravaged yields. The toll? A staggering 35% plunge in global olive oil output, according to the International Olive Council. That kind of drop is unprecedented and catastrophic. For consumers, this translates to chaos. Wholesale prices hit record highs in 2024, and retail costs followed suit. Across the U.S., grocery stores have noticeably slimmed down their olive oil selections, focusing only on mid-range options while premium extra virgin oils become an indulgence fewer people can afford. And in Europe, it's even worse. Lock boxes have been installed in supermarkets to prevent thefts because, yes, olive oil has become that valuable. Meanwhile, restaurateurs in the U.S. have been forced to make tough choices, cutting back to ration what's left. Many now save their olive oil stockpiles for drizzling or finishing dishes rather than cooking. Here's the bigger problem. There's only so much olive oil to go around, and importers are scrambling to secure even a fraction of their usual supply. Shipment delays from previous port strikes on the West Coast further compounded the issue, leaving shelves barren. Costco, for example, has implemented purchase limits on large jugs of olive oil, an item previously so abundant that it was taken for granted. Even if you can find those gallon-sized bottles now, you'll be staring at price tags that seem to belong to fine wines, not cooking essentials. And don't expect relief soon. Analysts warn that olive groves need time to recover, and with the ongoing threat of climate change and rising temperatures, it could take years before we see production return to normal levels, if it ever does. It's a harsh reality. Until then, olive oil is transforming into a luxury good rather than a pantry staple. Those golden bottles you've always relied on? Consider them a fleeting treasure. With olive oil drying up, what's next in this cascade of crises? For the answer, unwrap your favorite candy bar, if you can still afford it. That's right, chocolate is next, and this shortage is as bitter as it gets. 5. Chocolate and cocoa. What if your go-to comfort food during stressful days simply vanished? For chocolate lovers and baking enthusiasts, that impending reality is terrifyingly close. Chocolate is in trouble, and the world's cocoa supply is spiraling into a period of scarcity not seen in decades. Fewer chocolate bars, smaller packages, and soaring prices. For many, this bitter reality is already hitting shelves. And the worst is yet to come. The heart of this crisis lies in West Africa, home to 70% of the world's cocoa. But this region, particularly Ghana and Côte d'Ivoire, has been relentlessly crushed by poor weather and outbreaks of plant diseases. Crops that should be flourishing have been failing catastrophically, with Ghana's cocoa harvest plummeting by nearly 30% just this season. Aging, diseased trees have suffered under inconsistent rain, destroying far more beans than usual. Global reports confirm the nightmare scenario no one wanted to believe. We're facing a cocoa deficit of 375,000 tons in 2023-24, the largest shortfall in over 60 years. What happens when demand overwhelms supply? Year after year, stocks shrink, factories panic, and prices soar. Cocoa futures exploded to a 46-year high last summer and continued their upward climb into 2024. By then, costs for chocolate manufacturers had doubled and the trickle-down effect hit hard. Candy giants like Hershey's and Nestle aren't just hiking prices, they're quietly shrinking candy bars. The dreaded shrinkflation that leaves consumers paying more for less. The icing on this bittersweet disaster? Specialty chocolate products are vanishing altogether. Industry insiders are warning that luxury dark chocolates, niche-flavored bars, and baking powders could disappear entirely in the coming months. With cocoa reserves dwindling to historic lows, big brand manufacturers are focusing on their popular mass-market products like plain milk chocolate bars, leaving smaller or high cocoa percent products behind. Already, grocery stores are rolling out signs limiting customers to 1 or 2 chocolate items per trip. Some viral clips on TikTok have shown barren chocolate aisles, with frustrated shoppers unable to grab a simple bag of chocolate chips for cookies. And don't think the supply chain issues stop here. Even on the production side, tensions are high. Côte d'Ivoire has hinted at raising cocoa export prices, further tightening the market. For consumers, this means that chocolate is well on its way to becoming an indulgence rather than a household regular. While Valentine's Day chocolates and Easter bunnies might still show up in 2025, you'll be paying 2 or 3 times as much for them, if you can find them. This crisis isn't just about candy bars, it symbolizes just how fragile the global food system has become. But if you think chocolate shortages are intense, just wait until we talk about rice. A staple turned scarce? That's a terrifying problem no one can ignore. 6. Rice. Rice isn't just food. For billions around the world, it's life itself. Even here in the US, where it's not the backbone of our diets, rice fills a crucial gap in our meals, from stir-fries to gumbo. Yet now the unthinkable is happening. Global rice stocks are being hammered like never before, leaving shoppers scrambling and prices climbing. Buckle up, because the rice shortage is a cautionary tale in global food chaos. The calamity started with a shock move by India in July 2023. India, long the world's #1 rice exporter, abruptly banned exports of non-basmati white rice in a desperate attempt to curb inflation at home. Overnight, this sent rice prices soaring to their highest levels in 15 years, igniting a supply chain nightmare. India accounts for 40% of global rice exports. When they pulled the plug, the ripple effects hit every market, every table, and every consumer worldwide. What followed was chaos. Videos from U.S. stores went viral as panicked shoppers clamored for 20 to 50-pound bags of rice, some even scaling store shelves to grab the last stock. Warehouse stores like Costco implemented strict purchase limits on bags of jasmine or basmati rice. And prices? A bag of jasmine rice that once cost $15.00 surged to $30.00 or higher almost overnight. Some stores catering to South Asian or Asian American communities reported selling out completely within hours. Adding insult to injury, other major exporters like Thailand and Vietnam found themselves overwhelmed by skyrocketing demand. Even when rice trickled into the U.S., it was priced at an uncomfortable premium. U.S. rice crops couldn't save the day either. California's drought-stricken fields produced the smallest harvests in years. Popular varieties like Calrose rice, common in sushi and stir-fries, became harder to find in the West. Today, in early 2025, the crisis burns on quietly. International rice prices remain stubbornly high, and while the panic buying may have slowed, the effects haven't faded. Grocery store shelves are often half empty where large rice bags once ruled. Online forums buzz with stories of people struggling to find affordable rice or settling for smaller-sized bags they'd avoid under normal circumstances. The sobering truth? Rice joins the unnerving pattern of staples slipping out of reach. While most of us might see it as a side dish, for millions of households, losing rice is like losing bread or water. It's a scenario that underscores just how precarious our food supply has become. 7. Fresh berries. Picture it. A warm spring morning, and you're craving those fresh, vibrant berries to toss into a smoothie or sprinkle on pancakes. You head to the grocery store, expecting to grab a pint of strawberries or maybe some raspberries. But the shelves? Empty. Or stocked with tiny 6-ounce boxes, priced so high they might as well be jewels. That's the grim berry crisis unfolding right now. California, the heart of America's strawberry production, has endured bizarre and debilitating weather patterns that have crippled its berry supply. The horror began with an unusually wet winter in 2023. Torrential rain set the stage, but then came something far worse. The winter of 2024 turned bone dry, leaving crops starved for water just when they needed it most. On top of that, unseasonal cold snaps slowed down the already delayed growth of winter berries. When rain finally did arrive, it was in disastrous quantities and at the worst possible time. Heavy December downpours hit fields in Santa Maria and Oxnard right when strawberries were ripening. Farmers couldn't harvest fast enough, leading to widespread mold and rotting fruit. And Florida, often the backup for the country's winter strawberry supply, faced its own brand of disaster. Back-to-back hurricanes in late 2024 ripped through its central farm regions, destroying vast swaths of farmland. Growers desperately replanted, but by the time January rolled around, many fields were still maturing, leaving markets with far fewer Florida strawberries than usual. The eastern U.S., which relies heavily on Florida berries early in the year, saw either bare shelves or outrageously expensive imports. Speaking of imports, Mexico, which typically steps in to supply blackberries, raspberries, and strawberries during off-seasons, faced its own labor crisis. Farmhands were harder to find, with tens of thousands of acres going unharvested as ripe berries withered on the vine. Compounding this catastrophe, global shipping delays and cooler-than-normal temperatures in Mexico slowed logistical solutions. Put simply, the fresh berry supply chain turned into a perfect storm of disaster. Wholesale markets reflected this chaos. By March 2025, berry prices had doubled or even tripled compared to previous years. Strawberries that once sold for $15.00 a box now commanded $30.00 or more. Retailers passed on those costs, with pints of strawberries climbing to $8.00 and tiny raspberry packs selling for $6.00 or $7.00. Some grocery stores simply stopped carrying certain berries, unable to justify the price hikes to customers. Blueberries, often imported from places like Chile during the winter, faced their own delay issues due to shipping backlogs and excessive demand. Consumers have turned to social media to vent their frustrations, trading tips on how to cope with the berry drought. Frozen berries, processed from the previous year's harvest, have surged in popularity as fresh options have become unattainable. One Reddit user joked that their first fresh strawberry of the year felt like biting into luxury, given how scarce and expensive they've become. Even smoothie shops and dessert cafes are feeling the pinch, tweaking recipes to use more affordable ingredients like bananas while scaling back on berries. Experts claim that California's main harvest season in late spring might ease the crisis slightly, but prices are expected to remain high, and availability will still be patchy. Until then, enjoying fresh berries might feel less like a grocery transaction and more like a luxury splurge. 8. Specialty flours. Alternative flours have become kitchen essentials for bakers and dieters alike, offering gluten-free and paleo-friendly options like almond, coconut, and oat flours. But what happens when these specialty items all but vanish from your baking aisle? That's the stark reality confronting us in 2025. Crop failures, skyrocketing demand, and supply chain disaster have combined to gut the availability of these flours, leaving many consumers scrambling to adjust their go-to recipes. Take almond flour, for instance, a versatile alternative beloved for cookies, breads, and macarons. Its availability relies entirely on California's almond orchards. And those orchards? They've been through hell. Persistent drought, followed by freak frost events and untimely rain during blooming seasons, decimated almond yields. California's 2023 harvest was one of the worst in decades, leaving almond farmers with no choice but to prioritize major food manufacturers over smaller buyers. For regular shoppers, this resulted in limited stock, higher prices, and fewer options on grocery shelves. The usual variety of affordable almond flour brands has dwindled, leaving only overpriced organic or luxury alternatives. The story's no different for coconut flour. This pantry staple, made from dried coconuts, has been severely impacted by typhoons and logistical nightmares in key production regions like the Philippines. Shipping container shortages and rising freight costs have made importing coconut flour even harder. Shoppers in many areas have reported completely empty shelves where coconut flour used to sit, with clerks uncertain when new shipments will arrive. And then there's oat flour. Oats, already stretched thin due to the oat milk surge, faced lower production in North America last year caused by droughts in Canada. Farmers planted less acreage overall, draining the supply even further. Gluten-free blends and baking mixes which heavily rely on oat flour have been directly impacted, creating ripple effects across the market. Demand is only making things worse. The popularity of gluten-free and grain-free diets has skyrocketed, growing specialty flour use at a staggering rate. Yet while demand surges, production can't keep pace. Almond trees and coconut palms take years to mature, and supply cannot magically increase overnight. This leaves shoppers in a bind, with some resorting to homemade solutions like grinding their own flours from raw ingredients. Bake-it-at-home enthusiasts have also tried substituting lesser-known options like chickpea or tiger nut flour, though these replacements come with mixed reviews and distinct flavors that aren't for everyone. Small businesses that rely on these flours are feeling the squeeze too. Gluten-free bakeries and niche health food brands are cutting back on product availability or raising prices to cope with ingredient shortages. Almond flour cookies have vanished from menus, and prepackaged goods advertise higher costs with limited batches. Until crop yields recover and supply chains stabilize, specialty flours will remain scarce, expensive, and difficult to find. 9. Certain meat cuts. Prepare to rethink your next BBQ or steak dinner. The American meat industry, which once seemed unshakable, is suffering from shortages that are sending certain prized cuts into obscurity. High-end beef, popular pork products, and even fan-favorite chicken wings are becoming scarcer and pricier by the day. Start with beef, where decades of drought and staggering feed costs have gutted cattle herds across the U.S. By 2024, the national beef inventory hit its lowest level in over 60 years, causing a sharp decline in availability of premium cuts like ribeye, tenderloin, and prime rib. Supermarkets now feature thinner, smaller steaks, while restaurants struggle to secure the quality cuts their menus promise. Even ground beef, once abundant, has seen slight fluctuations in price due to reduced livestock numbers. Pork products aren't far behind. Pork shoulder, a BBQ favorite, has seen supply issues as demand for smoked and roasted dishes like pulled pork skyrockets. Suppliers have been unable to keep pace, forcing price hikes and limited availability that have affected home cooks and restaurant owners alike. And then, there are chicken wings, the quintessential game day snack. The avian flu outbreaks of 2022, combined with processing plant slowdowns, have created a repeat of past shortages. Why? Wholesale wing prices have surged, squeezing local restaurants and leaving grocery store coolers conspicuously understocked. Even more ominously, these shortages may not resolve quickly. Ranchers and producers warn that rebuilding cattle herds takes years and significant investments, while poultry and pork workflows remain plagued by labor and cost challenges. Grill masters, brace yourselves. The days of readily available steak and wings are 10. Dairy alternatives. Plant-based dairy products, once seen as the solution to traditional milk's problems, are now facing their own nightmarish crisis. Oat milk, almond milk, and even vegan cheeses are under siege. Exploding demand, ingredient shortages, and production bottlenecks have left grocery store shelves barren of these popular staples. The explosion in popularity for plant-based options has been nothing short of remarkable. By 2025, oat milk alone captured nearly 15% of the U.S. milk market. But this growth came at a cost. Equipment failures, supply chain hiccups, and raw ingredient shortages hampered producers' ability to keep up. Oats, almonds, and coconuts, all essential components, faced critical supply crunches due to environmental disasters and price spikes. Logistic woes turned things from bad to worse, leaving consumers unable to find their favorite brands or struggling to afford the few available options. Shoppers reported store limits on oat milk cartons and almond butter stocks completely vanished. Meanwhile, vegan cheeses and butters disappeared sporadically from grocery aisles, throwing dietary plans into chaos. Until suppliers ramp up production and ingredient availability normalizes, plant-based dairy is entering a period of scarcity that could force many consumers to scale back their reliance on these alternatives. This crisis quickly reminds us just how fragile even the most innovative food solutions can be.